All right, everybody, welcome back. Today, we are taking a deep dive into ex post facto research.
Ooh,
I
exciting.
know, right?
Yeah.
So have you ever wondered how researchers figure out the causes of things that already happened?
Yeah.
Like what leads to certain outcomes or social behaviors?
Right.
That's where ex post facto research comes in.
That's so cool.
It is really cool. We've got this awesome academic paper
Okay.
that's going to be our guide for today. And I
Excellent.
think by the end of this deep dive, you'll understand what this kind of research is,
Hmm.
how it works, and why it matters.
Cool. I'm ready.
Me too.
Sure.
So the paper starts off with a pretty straightforward definition.
All right.
It says, ex post facto research is a kind of research in which the researcher predicts the possible causes behind an effect that has already occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes definitions can be a little dry, though.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's use an example from the paper to make it a bit more relatable.
Okay. Yeah.
The paper talks about delinquency in children. You obviously can't go back in time and change things,
Right.
but you can look for clues in their past.
Yeah.
So researchers can't manipulate the cause in this type of research.
Right.
It's more about working backward from the effect.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
It is interesting. We often try to understand why things happened in our own lives.
Totally.
This is a similar way of doing that.
Yeah.
So one thing that jumps out to me is the need for a comparison group.
Okay.
Why is that so important?
Well, you have to have something to compare it to.
Right.
It helps you isolate the effects.
Got it.
It's like if you were trying out a new recipe.
Yeah.
And you want to know if one specific ingredient is making a difference, you would make one batch with that ingredient and one batch without it.
Right.
So that second batch, the one without it,
Okay.
that's your comparison group.
So in the delinquency example, the researchers might compare a group of children who engage in delinquent behavior to a group who don't. Then they can look at the differences in those groups and try to understand what might be causing it.
Exactly.
So I'm getting that comparison groups are super important.
Yeah, for sure.
The paper also talks about how ex post facto research focuses on the how and what of an event.
Okay.
And less on the why.
Right.
It's more about exploring all of the possible causes that could be going on.
Which can get really complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there could be multiple causes that are intertwined.
That makes sense.
It's like trying to untangle a giant knot.
I like that.
You have to look at each strand to see how it contributes.
Speaking of knots
Yeah.
and messy situations, the paper brings up another important point.
Okay, what's that?
The danger of confusing correlation with causation.
Oh, yeah, that old chestnut.
Enter the post hoc fallacy.
The post hoc fallacy, yes.
It's so easy to assume that because two things happen together, that
Right.
one caused the other.
Yeah.
But that's not always true.
Definitely not.
Let's look at that example from the paper. It says, to imagine someone sees that a child's parents weren't around much during their childhood, and that the child later engages in delinquent behavior.
Okay.
It's easy to just assume that absent parents caused that delinquency,
Yeah.
but that might not be the whole story.
Right. It could be something else.
Exactly. What if it's actually the influence of the child's peer group?
Yeah.
Or a combination of a bunch of things.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
really tempting to draw those simple connections.
Totally.
But things are often way more nuanced.
They really are.
So now I'm curious how this stacks up against other kinds of research,
Yeah.
like experiments.
Right.
What are the pros and cons of this method?
Ooh, good question.
When might this method be better and what kinds of questions can it answer?
I think the biggest difference is control.
Okay. Yeah.
In a true experiment, researchers can manipulate variables directly. They can randomly assign people to different groups.
Okay.
So if there's any differences in outcomes, it's probably due to the thing that they are changing.
Right. But in ex post facto research, you're working with things that have already happened.
Yeah.
There's no time machine to control those variables.
Right.
It's more like trying to solve a mystery
I like that.
after the crime has already happened.
Yeah.
It's not about creating the conditions yourself. It's about working with the evidence.
So it's trickier to isolate cause and effect
Yeah.
because you might see a connection between two things.
Yes.
But it's hard to be absolutely sure that one actually caused the other.
Right, and that's where that fallacy can creep in.
Yeah.
We might see children who watch a lot of violent TV shows
Okay.
also display aggressive behavior, but can we say for sure that the TV shows caused it?
Not really, because maybe those kids were already prone to aggression before.
Right.
Or maybe there's something else going on entirely.
Like their home environment.
Yeah.
That's why researchers have to be really careful.
And thorough.
Yes. They have to consider all of the different explanations.
And control for other variables.
As much as they can.
So it's like a puzzle with some of the pieces missing.
Yeah, it can be tough.
But being aware of those limitations is key.
Totally.
It's about understanding the strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And interpreting the results in a smart way.
I agree.
It's not about dismissing this kind of research altogether.
Right.
But understanding how to use it correctly.
Exactly.
Which brings us to our next big point.
Okay.
I'm ready.
I am too.
Let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses of this research method.
Okay.
Ex post facto research is really good for like tackling those real world situations where experiments just wouldn't work.
Like ethically.
Yeah, ethically.
Or practically.
Exactly. So give me some examples.
Like, imagine you're trying to understand the long-term impacts of a natural disaster.
Okay.
You can't exactly create a hurricane in a lab.
No.
But you can use this method to study the effects of a hurricane that already happened.
Oh, I see.
Or like things like childhood trauma, economic recessions.
It would be really unethical to create those situations.
Yeah, totally.
For an experiment.
It lets us study the effects of these events without having to actually manipulate them.
So it's a good tool when ethical reasons or practical limitations make experiments impossible.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there are weaknesses too.
Yeah, of course.
Like every tool, it has limitations.
Exactly. And I think one of the biggest ones is that lack of control.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier.
In a true experiment, researchers can manipulate those variables and randomly assign people to different groups. But with this method, you're dealing with things that already happened.
It's like being a detective.
Totally.
Trying to gather evidence after the crime.
And because of that, it's way more tricky to isolate cause and effect. You might see a connection between two things.
Okay.
But it's hard to be sure that one caused the other.
Yeah, it's like you see some crumbs by the cookie jar.
Okay, yeah.
And you think, who took a cookie? But you didn't actually see them take it.
Exactly.
So you can't be 100% certain.
And this is where that fallacy can come back.
Yeah.
The post hoc fallacy.
The post hoc fallacy.
We might see that kids who watch a lot of violent TV are more aggressive. But can we definitively say that the TV caused that?
Not really, because maybe they were already aggressive.
Exactly.
Or maybe there's something else, like something going on at home.
Right, exactly.
That's contributing to both.
That's why researchers have to be so thorough and careful.
Yeah.
They have to consider alternative explanations.
In control for as many variables as they can.
It's like a puzzle with some pieces missing.
Okay.
You have to work with what you've got.
So like the paper says, awareness of the limitations is really important.
Yes.
It's not about saying ex post facto research is bad.
Right.
But knowing when to use it and how to interpret those results.
Exactly.
That's really important.
Yeah.
Think about all those headlines we see.
Oh, yeah, like the clickbaity ones?
Yeah.
Coffee causes cancer?
Social media leads to depression.
Right.
Okay.
But now that we know more,
yeah,
we could be more critical.
And think, okay, well, what kind of research was this? Was it a carefully controlled experiment?
Right.
Or was it ex post facto?
Where it's hard to tell what caused what.
So we can be smarter about the information we see?
Definitely, we can be more savvy about it all.
Okay, so we've covered what ex post facto research is, how it works, its strengths, weaknesses, and how understanding it can make us more informed.
It can even help us in our daily lives.
I like that.
Hopefully, we've made everyone a little more curious about the complexities of the world.
Yeah.
It's not always about finding simple answers.
Or easy explanations.
Sometimes the most interesting things come from exploring those gray areas.
I agree. Now, as we're wrapping up, I'm thinking we've been talking about understanding the past.
Right.
But what about the future?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Can we use this method to look ahead?
Or are we always looking back?
I guess that's where we're going next. Can we use ex post facto research to look into the future? Like, is that even possible?
Well, it's a tricky question. Some researchers think that if we understand the patterns and connections in the past, we might be able to see potential trends for the future.
Okay, so like
almost like an early warning system for different things.
I see. So like
by looking at what caused recessions in the past, we might be able to identify warning signs for the future.
Right. And maybe prevent them.
Or really soften the blow.
Yeah.
But it's really important to remember the limitations of this research.
Right.
Even when we're trying to think ahead.
Because just because something happened in the past doesn't mean it's definitely going to happen again.
Yes.
The world's always changing.
Right. Think about how much technology has changed things.
Yeah.
All those advancements make it hard to rely only on past data.
To predict the future.
Exactly.
So it's not a perfect crystal ball.
No, but it can give us some ideas.
Some clues about what might happen.
Exactly. Ex post facto research can help us identify those risks and understand the different forces at play.
The social and economic forces.
Right, and maybe even see some possible scenarios for the future.
But we should be skeptical about those predictions too, right?
For sure. The future is shaped by so many different things.
Yeah, and a lot of those are impossible to predict.
Exactly. It's about using this kind of research to inform ourselves.
Not to, like, tell us exactly what's going to happen.
Exactly. So it's a helpful tool, but it's not a perfect one.
Okay, I think that's a great point for our listeners.
Yeah.
We've learned about what ex post facto research is.
How it works.
How it can be used.
Right.
It's not perfect, but it's powerful.
And we've even thought about how it could be used to understand the future.
We talked about how to think critically about those cause and effect relationships.
Yeah.
And to watch out for that post hoc fallacy.
It can be sneaky.
So now our listeners are equipped to be more informed.
About the information they see out there.
In the world.
That's a really important skill.
So as you go about your day, keep those principles of ex post facto research in mind.
Ask questions.
Dig a little deeper.
Don't take things at face value.
And until next time,
keep
diving deep.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Your support helps us keep creating valuable content like this. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. Join our community for more insights into psychology and personal development. Let's grow and learn together. See you in the next video.